All right, we're going to talk about multimedia best practices, and needless to say, you have some people in this room who would be able to assist you further with any of these kind of tips and tricks as well, and so I'll give them opportunities to jump in whenever they feel appropriate. So when we're thinking about lectures, we really want to start to rethink the lecture and what it looks like. So each of you has a document in your packet that has a square, and it's broken out with little squares around it, filled in with a bit of information. So our quick fix that a lot of people think about is, here's your face-to-face classroom, you just want to record it and put it online. But the problem with that is it's a really big missed opportunity. Why do you think that is? Yes? This is it with all the colors, pretty. Yeah, that's it. That's a two-sided one. Why do you think just recording your lecture and sticking it up online is a missed opportunity?
There's no interaction. There's no interaction.
There's no interaction, yeah? Let me ask you, are you going to sit down and watch 3 hours of anything?
No.
A lot of us can't even make it through a movie that's 3 hours long, right? So a lot of people won't watch it. You also, like you said, have less interactivity. When in an online environment, it is a highly interactive kind of environment, so we have opportunities there. So we really want to reconceptualize our lectures to better fit this new technology and to better engage our students. So we want to distill the classroom. So if we had our traditional lecture here, we want to break it apart. And so we want to make sure that we have all those little bits and pieces come out together and then start looking at what we can do in each of those sections. I will say these sections are not mutually exclusive. So, you know, an animation could be an external content, so just keep that in mind. But these are sort of some of the bigger kind of types of other things that you can do. It may not be exhaustive. You may find something else that you can do. But this is generally the kind of stuff that you can do. We want to take what was our 3-hour lecture and break it down into smaller pieces. So an example's here. When you have your outcomes, this is, you know, what would you have done related to assessment, your weekly objectives each week. Maybe you talked about your outcomes in your class. Maybe you did some formative assessments. Have you ever used the little clicker technologies when you've been in class? You know, great formative assessment. Did that once in a patho class. I just wanted to double check if students remembered their anatomy before I started talking about their patho, and they had the blood going through the heart the wrong way. So I realized at that point, all right, I need to back up here, and I need to teach a little bit before that, because you're not going to understand that. Do you draw? Do you show any presentations, little animations, something that represent a complex idea? Process animations are really great with process. So I was teaching a health sciences class to non-health majors, and I was trying to figure out how I'm going to teach them a little bit about viruses and how viruses enter a cell and what's the difference between a virus and a bacteria. And I'm thinking, all right, here's your cell and here's your virus coming along, and I'm like, no, that doesn't really seem to work. Even drawing it on the board seemed not so great. So I actually ended up finding a really great animation from NPR that showed what that all looks like. And it's way more informative to see it, see the process of it, than for me to go, no, virus enters. So, you know, sometimes doing an animation of a process can be very useful. Do you link out to websites like we did here? I took you to the Time on Task website at another university. Is there something you look at there? Could be something related to what they're going to do in the future, you know, an accreditation type thing. So very useful. Do you ask your students to apply what they've learned, do some interactive things? Interactive elements are always really useful. An example, I had a faculty one time say she takes all of these, what do you call them, EKG and she pastes them around the room. Yeah. And then she has a QR code on them, and the students will go around and they'll do an interpretation, and they can scan the QR code and find out if they were right. So that was a very interactive element in her classroom. What could we possibly do that would replicate that online? Well, there's actually some really great websites that we could go to that will also have various different rhythms and that kind of thing, where students have to also interpret those, and then they get the right answer as to whether they're correct or not. So there are often ways that we can take what was a really great idea in face-to-face classroom and then flip it to an online classroom. You have collaborative sessions. These are your teamwork. So I think we just talked about teamwork, and some of the tools that they can use there. Again, like I said, with the teamwork charter, I let them decide when their collaborative sessions are. They can decide, if they all want to meet at 2 in the morning, then they can meet at 2 in the morning, but I ain't going to be there. Discussions. Again, we have our discussions a little bit more naturally in class, but the good thing about online, you're going to get more students discussing things who were maybe a little more introverted, who are a little less comfortable putting up their hand in this kind of a classroom environment. And you're kind of forcing people to do at least a minimum number of things as well. I used to actually sit a fishbowl on my table and say, if people don't start answering my questions, I'm drawing names, and you might get randomly picked for something you don't remember, so you probably want to answer me when you do remember it. Informational graphics. So I actually have provided you with these little images, or even the one that we did earlier on assignments. Why are graphics so useful?
Easy to remember.
Easier to remember?
A lot of the students are visual.
Yeah, a lot of people are visual learners. That whole adage of a picture says 1,000 words is actually very, very true. Think of, again, process or anything. If you're going, this goes to this, goes to this, try describing an organizational chart without an image. It is super weird to try to go through that. Or a budget without an image. Those kind of tools are far more useful that way. And there are neat tools where you can make a lot of infographics or even have students make infographics. So I will teach in nursing education class, and I'll actually have them, by the end of one of these classes, go through and make an information graphic on the process that they would use in order to create curriculum moving forward. Because then they can take that, stick it above their computer when they're working on things to remember what they had to do when they had to do it. Simulations. This could be, real world, even role play is sort of in this category, simulating the real pieces. There are some very interesting tools out there. We're starting to get more and more virtual reality stuff that's coming out. Have you ever heard of Google Cardboard? Some may, some may not. It's essentially exactly what it sounds like. There's a cardboard, you put it together, and it's like one of the headsets. Yeah, like you would, and then you could put your phone in there. And I was at a conference and we did that, and if I walk forward, in this image, I'm walking forward. So I was walking around Paris, and I'm like, oh, this is excellent. Looking up, Paris. I'm like, all right, I just saved myself a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
So, there are opportunities and things like that, assuming you can find the right simulation. Sometimes you may want someone to walk around a business and check out different things, see if something's well laid out, that kind of thing. There's also a lot of healthcare nursing ones. Love some of the technology that's finally coming out regarding assessments. So, for example, Shadow Health is one where you can actually assess this patient virtually online. You can ask her all sorts of questions, and the backside of that, there have been nurses who programmed in the answers, and she does respond very much like a real patient does. So if I ask this patient, who's Tina, what are you allergic to? She'll tell you cats. She'll leave it at that. You have to probe more. Are you allergic to any medications? Then she'll tell you penicillin. So she's not just sitting there going with all the information, because patients usually don't do that either. So you have to ask the right questions in the right way, etc. And the good thing about some of these simulations is it captures stuff on the back end. I'll be honest, I have never stood over a student all day and watched how they communicated with patients. But I can capture it on the back end with this particular tool and see whether or not maybe this student's asking a lot of close-ended questions, and I can coach them on that. But I probably wouldn't have even caught that necessarily in a face-to-face environment, because I'm not just standing there watching you going, It's also good for them to go through and listen to some of these things themselves. When you're doing, simulations can also be of the student recording themselves. And like, as we mentioned before, students will continue to re-record themselves until they feel like they've gotten it right. But I will also have students critique their own piece. So I had them do a communication scenario in one class. Again, it was an advanced communication. And in this particular environment, it was face-to-face, but I had another nurse pretend to be the patient. And they said, you're going to get graded partially on how you did in this video. Truth be told, you're going to get evaluated based on how well you communicate. But a larger chunk of your grade is going to be based on your assessment of how you did. So I appreciate this is a nerve-wracking environment, but if you get it really well in a nerve-wracking environment, you'll do fine in a non-nerve-wracking environment. And some students were it was very interesting to read how they evaluated themselves and how they realized, oh, this is what I do. And it's so much more powerful when the student realizes, I have this verbal or physical tic when I'm nervous. I fidget with my hair. I say, one student said to me, you must think I'm a dumb blonde. And I said, ooh, where did that come from? And she said, I said the word like every other word. You know, like, I really like that. And I said, no. I said, that's your verbal tic. When you get nervous, you say like a lot. And then you would also get other people who would say a lot. You don't notice this when you're actually talking. You don't notice that maybe you're holding your face in a certain way that is projecting something to the audience that you don't even realize you're projecting. And like I said, someone else can tell you and you can go, yeah, shit, whatever. But evaluate yourself sometime and you can begin to see a lot of stuff in there. So there are different ways you can use these things as well. So I really love doing it that way. And then worked examples or demonstrations. Again, I would walk you through step by step. This is how you do a budget. I do it, we do it, you do it. So here is some examples. So I would cover a PowerPoint. I would draw an image. This is some of the stuff you have. So this is an example that I did of viruses. And I might show an image or an animation of that. Here we have a YouTube video regarding the spread of tuberculosis. Very appropriate. Someone sneezed right at that moment. I tell the student to use this Virus Explorer. It's a very interactive tool. I assign the students groups and they complete an activity on the permutations of antigens. We discuss the impact of the Zika pandemic and some of the steps the CDC took to contain it. We looked at several images from the textbook and knowledge checks. Again, they usually get hung up on like antibodies and antigens. So I'm always looking for confused faces. So these are things that I'm going to try and make sure I cover with students. There's an activity to simulate the virus. Have you ever done the one where you had the colored stickers and everybody went around and shook each other's hands and all of a sudden everybody's infected? That kind of thing. And in this one, it was the 1918 flu. And then I walk students through the process of exploring the atomic structure of an antibody. So we can still do a lot of those things. So we want to distill the classroom experience, like I said, from 3 hours of lecture down into, even all the way down to 0. You may not have any just straight up lecture stuff as the same way that you did before. But usually there'll still be stuff that you say, I need to tell you this. I need to because I need to connect the dots. You know, just having a whole bunch of separate, disparate activities or information just feels like that. It just feels like you just threw a bunch of stuff at the page. Having you provide some connection between all of these bits and pieces can be very important, and that can occur in some of the didactic content. We do recommend, though, you keep it short, you keep it sweet, you break it into multiple pieces. In the day and age of cat videos, people's attention span has gone down quite a lot. I had a document that was sent to me by Sigma Theta Tau, the Nursing Honor Society, and it actually had in it about how people's attention spans have changed, and we are now less than a goldfish. So a goldfish has a longer attention span than we do. When we are producing didactic content, though, we still want to be very deliberate about it. So when I'm up here in front of people, I might ad lib. I see someone's face, I make a change because I can tell you're confused, or I can tell you're really, engaged with the material as well. When we're doing recordings like this, it is very easy to get off track. And remember what I said? I'm a romance novelist, so believe you me, I can record a very long video very quickly. And what went from 5 minutes turned into 50 minutes, and I'm talking about frogs. So we started with didactic content, maybe of trying to be less than 5 minutes. So we're going to look at then producing this using PowerPoint. That kind of thing is a frequent one. You don't have to, though. You could be without PowerPoint. Consider whether you want to do it with or without annotations. If you're going to do without annotations, you've got things like Zoom. You're going to do WebEx. You can record directly into Blackboard, that kind of thing. With annotations, I'll get it right eventually. We can use other tools and techniques. If you're not as familiar with some of this stuff, then that would be good time to engage with your tech group. And they can usually help you with putting in some of these pieces as well. So this might be call-outs. This might be if you're trying to put in a math problem or writing. We have a lot of people who do a lot of the math pieces who will use like these tablets, because then you can actually sort of draw on your thing like you would on the board as well. Then you'll determine your hosting platform, which are you guys hosting your videos through here, or do you require them to host a video somewhere else?
We have a repository or a place to put videos.
Okay. Some places require you to put them on YouTube. Other places have a hosting repository here. So again, engage with your ID team so that you can post them here, because that way you don't have to post them to YouTube where everyone can theoretically see it. Then you have your produced video, and you're going to put it in your class. But again, not that simple. We do want to make sure that we have bits and pieces with our produced video. So here, let's just say we have a produced video, an interactive element, having you go do an activity online, maybe a worked example, another produced video, and then a knowledge check. It would feel disconjointed sometimes if you just throw those items down. So what you really need to do is put some text between them as well, so that they feel more integrated. This is what you're going to do. This is some introductory tests this week. We're going to talk about viruses. You're going to watch this video. This video is about. This video is X amount long. Then I'm going to do some connected tests. Now that you've learned about these viruses, I want you to play this interactive game where you're going to see how different viruses attach to different elements on a cell. Now that we've looked at that, we're going to do a worked example. And so you connect the bits and pieces together. This is a huge portion about how students will see you as being present in the class. And really, when you think about it, that's what you're doing in the classroom. I'm helping you make the connections. So yes, I use a textbook. Yes, I use a video. Yes, I use all these things, but I connect them. Sometimes people don't connect them when they put them in their classroom. They just drop them in and say, good luck to you. Read this, do that. And it doesn't feel like it makes sense. So connect the dots for the students. And it can take less than a sentence, honestly, and it does make a difference. So, and then we moved from having one 3-hour lecture that probably no one's going to watch to having all of these different bits and pieces that people can learn at their own pace. All right, so when you're making the videos, so before I move on, any questions about that? No? All right. So why do we use a video? So, we basically use it so that we can help people recall. It engages with multiple different learning types. Obviously, you've got the audio, you've got the visual, and then things fit together well, so it can be a very effective educational tool. Some other benefits, it can visualize difficult concepts. Again, if you try to figure out what an org chart is just by talking about it or reading it, it's not all that clear. You want to see the visual of it. It can humanize material. Remember, this is an opportunity for you to put in your stories. So, this one experience, this one time can help them go, oh, now I understand why you're going to bother with that kind of thing. And it can provide some real-world experiences. Couple of different types, obviously. You can just pull up your camera, you can record yourself talking, and you can also do a screen presentation or recording. And you can do those screen presentation or recordings, again, in multiple ways. Most PowerPoints these days will allow you to do a voiceover, so you have the newer versions. Or you could pull up something like WebEx or Zoom, etc., share your screen, and do the recording that way. Where do you want to use them? If you use a video nowhere else, I highly recommend you do a recording of a welcome to this course. Again, it is trying to outline for the students why they should care. You know, I'm making you do this course for this reason, essentially. This is what we're going to cover. This is why we're going to cover it. This is how it's going to help you in the future. Really, when you think about a course, it is more than just the course description. Because again, I can get a course description of pathophysiology, but how you teach patho, how the next person teaches patho is going to be totally different. Budgeting, I'm sure you could teach thousands of hours of courses. You've had to make the decision how you're going to teach this budgeting course. Another one, faculty office hours. These can be very useful, especially when, like we were talking before, you can do some synchronous sessions so students can join if they want, and you can answer questions and then save them for everyone. Welcome to the module is probably, I would say, the second most important one, because again, each week then you're telling people, this is what you're going to learn this week, this is how you're going to learn. These are how the pieces all fit together, so it gives you that opportunity. Of course, you're going to have your lecture materials. A lot of the time, this is stuff that you know people struggle with. So I might be able to find a YouTube video or another video on another site of somebody doing a long assessment. But maybe I know that students really struggle with this one concept. So I want to actually pull that one concept out and help them and connect those bits and pieces. So there are times when you're going to want to maybe use an external video because they're showing a process or something, and there are times when you want to be the one talking because you know that people struggle with it, that people would do better with your story, those kinds of things. Lecture material with demonstration. These tend to be a tad more deliberate, so you might engage with your media production team. Let's just say you were doing communication scenarios. I've done this before where I've had myself and another faculty member sort of engage in a communication scenario. We recorded it and then uploaded it so students could critique it. If you're going to do that, don't be the faculty member because I don't want to critique you. But you know, if you just had two of your colleagues, and then you can critique it, do some things purposely that are bad. You know, tap your foot so they notice some of these things, so that they can critique this even before they have to go out and do something themselves. They can say good, bad, and different. And then a summary of the module. This can be pre-recorded because you're talking about content, but I like to do my summaries actually as the weeks go on because then I can pull in information from their discussion posts, and it really makes it clear that I am here now, and I'm not, this wasn't a set it and forget it kind of course. Other ones, discussions or assignment prompts or responses. Again, I always love having at least one that is video because, again, you get students engaging. I get to meet the students, more audio-visual, etc. And then assignment feedback is also a really great way to give that information to a student in a very short, concise way that is very helpful to them. So some timing. 5 minutes is really where you want to put it at. And think to yourself, if you had a 15-minute video, do you really feel like watching it? Maybe, maybe not. You're starting to get, if I gave you an hour video, could you cut out an hour of your day? Most people are like, an hour? I could do an hour. But if I gave you, you know, a whole bunch of 5-minute ones, believe it or not, it still could add up to the hour. But if you fit it in. You'll fit it in your day. A little bit less can be ideal, especially when you're having some of those shorter ones like your summary. If you're going to do more than that, if you have a lot of concepts you want to cover, just break them down into additional videos. This is an interesting study, and you'll see here at about the 6 to 9 minute mark, we've got students where the group versus how long they actually watched it. So if it was about 6 minutes, they watched it, they opened it, and they watched the whole thing. As the video got longer, they stopped watching sooner or didn't open it at all. So you look at an hour one, they ain't opening it. So keep that one in mind. If you want people to learn, break them down into smaller chunks. Think of your cat videos, they want a cat video. Also, I like to think about it as smaller chunks of, I can go this concept, now I can go this concept. And they actually may even be pulling them up on their phone, because you've got Blackboard apps, and watching them at work in between things. You know, so it's not a bad thing that they're short, because then they can think of it. If you say that you absolutely, I cannot positively break it down any less than 30 minutes or an hour, at the very least, then I would work with your production team to make sure you sort of tab it out so you can jump to a section. So if I do stop watching, I can come back and I can go to another section. Because otherwise, again, students just won't watch it. So here would be an example of some sample timing. A 3-minute welcome to the modules, a couple of lecture materials, and then a summary at the end. And this is 30 minutes of video, so it's not ridiculously long, but you've got a bunch of them. All right, questions? All right, production. So there, shockingly, are a couple of stages of production: pre, during, and post. When you're doing your pre-production, you want to plan things. What do you want to achieve with your video? Just like anything else, what's your goal? I'm not just talking to you for the sake of you hearing my voice. I really want you to learn something. Who is your audience? Do you tend to have students who are working adults? Are you looking at K through 12 people? Who are you talking to? Keep it short, like we said. Identify any visual needs. Do that well beforehand, because nothing worse than partway through during the recording going, oh, I need to get X, and stop your recording. Prep any slides you want to do, set up your shot, and write it out. Scripts. This is up to you. I would make a terrible actress because I cannot read a script. Like I had the prompt thing, I had to re-record something that another colleague had done, and the prompts were up there, and I sounded like I was reading. And the production team, no, we're going to do this again. You sound like an automaton. You sound like you're reading, and I'm like, all right, give me the information. I'm just going to have to ad-lib it. Then it won't sound like I'm reading, and we can then do the script afterwards. So I'll start with my items, and then my basic points, the big things I want to achieve, and then ad-lib, and then come back to my script, because I just simply cannot read straight from a script when I'm on that. Other people can. Other people are great.
Like she said, is the best thing to do is, one, look at your audience. Also, make sure that you take the important stuff that you want to cover, condense it into a small amount of area. Instead of a script, give yourself an agenda, a start point and an end point to keep you on track. And this way you can ad-lib and know where you're starting. Otherwise, if you just go without it, you can tend to trail, and it gets much longer than you want to.
And you end up talking about fraud.
Yes.
Absolutely. Also good to know, like I said, you can do either. But this is an interesting point. The average speaking rate is about 130 to 140 words per minute with 390 word script. So again, we said 250 to 350 words is a page. That would end up being a 3-minute video. So just sort of keeping those kind of numbers. Of course, first time you record something, you might be nervous, in which case you're talking at double speed or something like that. So, give yourself some practice times until you get a little bit more comfortable going through with that. Again, you want to prep your slides just like we've said in the past, but slides should be the supporting piece, not the communication itself. Especially if you're doing voiceover, let your voice be the thing that they're listening to, and your slides just support what you're saying. So don't put a lot of stuff on your slides, just a couple of high points, or better yet, images are even better. So which would you prefer? Now, it's not like you can't provide this information in some other form. You can put that in a Word document if people want to go see it. But in terms of actually doing your PowerPoint presentation, you want to keep it simple. Another one, charts are even better than text. So at a quick glance, can you tell me how the aging population is happening here? But can you show it here? You see the difference? Again, same information, one is just written out versus a chart. And you can see how our population is aging. And again, images can work better, because I could have written out all of this stuff. Images often work better. But only if they match what you're talking about. Have you ever seen a PowerPoint where somebody's got something on there that looks really pretty, but has absolutely nothing to do with what they're talking about? In our dual processing, we're thinking of it kind of like if you're catching rain in some funnels. So, all things being equal, which of these two bottles is going to end up with more water in it? It's not a trick question, guys. It's just going to be the same, right? It's going to be the same. We've got the same kind of funnel, same kind of rain. However, if we did this, which one's going to get more? B. And this is the same kind of thing. If you use two processed channels, the audio and the visual, you're going to get more. But only if they align. Because if they're like this, which one is getting more now? A, right. Like I said, this is images that don't match. This is information sort of in the background. I've heard people who've recorded stuff and they've had songs in the background or something like that where the audio is very distracting more than anything else. So misaligned, reading paragraphs of displayed text. So I've seen faculty do this. Today we are going to talk about, and you see their back the whole time, unrelated imagery, concurrent animation. So if this thing was going like this, that would be very distracting. When you're pacing, think about 1 to 2 slides per minute, so, and no more than 5 minutes, so you shouldn't have a lot of slides. Again, do all of it as you're talking to it. We don't want 1,000 slides. And I usually don't count my intro slide and my references in that 5. I'll do the 5 as the main body slides. Anytime you can, like I said, use imagery. Here, you know, heat coming out. It does not get hotter in a colder room. These kinds of things really show, especially process. Anytime you can kind of show process stuff like here, it tends to be very clear if you can show an image or again a video. Smart art is also awesome. Free imagery, these are a couple of free imagery sites, the Creative Commons ones, there's Pixabay, Unsplash, Morgue Files. For my nurses, I was disappointed too. It's not all about, you know, dead people. It's more of a morgue file in terms of journalism. So, because I couldn't figure out why they called it morgue files. And you know, there are other sites as well, depending on your, you know, topic of interest. So a lot of healthcare people, there's free healthcare related images in the CDC, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of stuff out there, again, depending on what you're looking at. Smart art, again, could be very useful. Now, when you're setting up your shot, limit the background noise. I mean, even cars going by can be very distracting to students. We want to make sure the microphone is close so you're not hearing muffled, but also don't put it under your jacket so it's like this and you can't hear anything. You want to keep it light and bright. You don't want to look like you're, you know, sitting in a catacomb somewhere. Think about your background. Cannot stress this enough. Actually, your best background is a clean color. Just stand in front of the wall here. Anything that's in the background can potentially be distracting. If you are sitting in front of a bookshelf, what do you think students are trying to do? Figure out what books you have. I was at one state school, and one of the faculty said, yeah, I didn't realize it, but right next to my head was a religious text. And she got told by the school she had to re-record that one and take it out because people were going to get offended. So just keep in mind, what is there? One of my colleagues had a funny one where the faculty member was recording this in their office at home, and
The sun came in.
actually it wasn't the son, it was even worse than that. He was watching the video afterwards because he was doing some ID work with her, and he stopped it and he had one of us come over and say, "What do you see wrong in this image?" And we're looking around. There was a bra hanging off something over to the side, and you're like, oh, so be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of how you're dressed, and I highly encourage you to dress head to toe when you're doing these videos, because I had a faculty member who did a video, stood up to turn it off, and he wasn't wearing pants. Didn't think that that would get caught in there, you know. So again, select an appropriate wardrobe. You don't have to be suit and tie, but I still would be professional. In fact, some students will say if you're suit and tie, you look unapproachable. So that could be a choice as well. You don't have to have every shot this choreographed. Quite honestly, you can do on-the-fly ones. We had one colleague who I was convinced had ADD, but he would stop mid-sentence, record himself to his students because something cool had happened, upload it, and move on. So he was kind of the person where you had to sort of stop him. No, let's finish our sentence. His students loved the fact that he would, be out downtown and he saw something that related to the class. He recorded it and did something with it. So, again, it definitely shows you there. And it shows how things can relate to the content as well. So, you can do a mix of things. I tend to do the more professional ones, especially if you're doing course introductions, module introductions. Those sort of more on-the-fly ones tend to be as it relates to specific content that you're seeing. If there was something on the news about Ebola and I was teaching a class that might be related, I might talk about that. Maybe I don't want that in the class permanently because Ebola outbreaks aren't occurring all the time. So I also don't want to date my videos.
How many of you have seen Khan Academy tutorial? Most of you?
Yeah.
Why it became so popular?
It's free.
Free? About his production? It's very conversational.
Yeah,
He would even make some typos or something like, and I need to clear that up. In one of his earlier videos, he was like, there was somebody coming, like a bell rang or something. So that's a little distracting to extreme, but he try to keep it more engaging as if he's sitting next to you. So that's actually what I think Gary is saying. It's make it more conversational.
To a certain degree.
When this content really.
Make sure you're also not laissez-faire about it, your feet kicked up, yo, what's up? Because I've seen that one go right awry. I also had a faculty member who sat there insulting the students, and I was saying, whoa, what are you doing? And he said, I'm being ironic. And I said, I don't really think they're going to interpret that as irony. I think they might interpret that a different way. Just also keep in mind, different things mean different things to people, so try to avoid idioms, colloquialisms, slang, any of those kinds of things, because you'd be amazed at how much things can mean different things in different cultures. And again, as appropriate for keeping that good eye on your background and everything around you. Limit the noise, like I said, proximity, set up where you're going to do it. And now we're going to go into our recording. Try and speak clearly and naturally, which is again the reason why I have to ad lib, because otherwise I'm reading it. Speak clearly and naturally. Limit extraneous movements. This is how I end up talking when I'm reading from something. The extraneous movements one is absolutely me. I talk with my hands. Hadn't guessed already. And so I have to be very careful that I'm not doing too much of that. It looks a little bit weird when you're in a video. But you want to, if you fidget with things, take those things away as much as you can. I see people pushing their glasses up 1,000 times, and it just looks like they're poking themselves in the head. Any of these things can be distracting. Limit any extraneous movements. Keep your eye on the time. It is super easy to go over. Very, very easy. And remember to smile. So just a quick tip. Have you ever seen the video on the screen where the first image before you click display is or something like that. That happens because of when they click the play button. So I highly recommend look down, look down, look down. You know, do your blinking. Look up, smile, count to 3, then hit record. So the first image that will be there will be you smiling. Or if your smile is creepy, just keep your face normal. I recommend you do that as you're ending as well, because the same thing is true. You get a lot of people where it's like this as they're turning off the click. So look down, or sorry, when you're starting, look down, look up, smile, then do your thing, then smile, count to 3, then hit off. And it's easier for then teams to help you edit off the front and the back if you have a very clear point. Otherwise, if you start talking immediately, there's almost no way they can edit off that front thing, or those are going to chop off your first words. Same thing at the end. If you hit end the moment your voice ends, they can't cut anything off because you'll cut off the words. So don't forget to smile. Again, we've got a lot of video capture ones. We've already talked about a bunch of those today. But you can also schedule time with your lovely neighborhood recording studio and your tech team. Wave to the crowd. There we go. And then step 3 is post-production. As much as possible, I try to limit what I need. So like again, the looking down, smiling, recording, looking, smiling, and then hitting in. I'm less likely to need that chopped off either end. But there are other things that you can do. You can put in audio cleanup. There are some tools that are out there that can essentially pick up if there's something consistent in your background, like cars moving by or some kind of hum or whatever. You can do texts and call outs. So if you've ever seen one of those ones where they're like, here, and the thing pops up, you can do that kind of thing. Transitions, you can zoom in and out, and there can be media overlays. So for example, for media overlays, we're doing all of this. We give them our PowerPoints, and they're able to better align them so that it's not just this. That's really good in this kind of environment. Not necessarily necessary when you're doing a small recording for your classroom, though. You guys already have your own hosting service, so we don't need to worry about that. And keep in mind transcripts. But you have, well, first of all, if you grab something from YouTube, it'll do a transcript for you. You may have to clean it up, especially if there is technical language. So then it doesn't always understand those kind of pieces, and there may be different words you have to fix up there. Sometimes as well you have to train the software, especially if you have a stronger accent or anything like that. It may or may not understand what you're saying at first. But I think a lot of the softwares are getting a lot better to recognize a lot of different accents. So hopefully that's slowly getting better. But I still have had colleagues who've had to even practice with their voice to text on their phone because it didn't always work for them. And then you guys have some transcript ability services?
We can get closed captioning.
Yeah, closed captioning, there you go. So that's important for your, of course, for your ADA accommodations. You should keep your content as much as possible evergreen. What do I mean by that? Don't start out your video by going, Merry Christmas! Because what happens when you're running the same video in April? It doesn't make sense, right? So try to make sure you don't lead in anything to, like, even the recent Ebola outbreak, then 2 years later, it's not recent anymore, right? So it dates it. Instead, you could say the Ebola outbreak of 2000 and whatever. Remove calendars from the wall if they're in your shot, so that way, again, it's not December 2016 and that kind of thing. So again, and then there's just going to have to be some videos that over time we update because the information's old, or you're wearing 1970s attire, that kind of thing. So there are things that we tend to update over time. I had a gastric sleeve many years ago, and I lost 100 pounds. For vanity's sake, I went through and I re-recorded a bunch of my videos because I was so different. And so that was what I wanted to do. So there are various different reasons why people will also re-record. I'll also see sometimes faculty A did the course initially, has some great videos, but maybe I like some of them. Maybe I want to re-record a couple of them. Maybe they don't want me to use any of their videos and I have to take them all out. So that's something as well to double check with in terms of sort of copyright type stuff. I also highly encourage when you're putting a video in from another source, watch the video from start to end. It is amazing how many videos get hacked, and then halfway through the video, all of a sudden there comes up this scary screaming face. So it started out as something very innocuous, then freaks everyone out, then continues on, or shall we say worse, or they may say something towards the end that's actually very inaccurate. So you want to make sure you're checking it not only for completion, but also that it is accurate, and that it's appropriate as well. So again, people standing up without pants on is not something you want, whether you recorded it or someone else recorded it. So definitely. I also recommend you check them more than once. Even if you're running it through on fast forward, to make sure that nothing happened, because what was true today may not be true tomorrow. What wasn't hacked today may be hacked tomorrow. What was free today may not be free tomorrow. What exists today may not exist tomorrow. So all of a sudden you end up having broken links to videos that no longer exist. You need to replace them, those kinds of things. So we do want to make sure that all of our stuff is there still and working. I often will go searching and I'll have more than one video on a topic if I can. Because then if one goes away or something happens to it, I'm not scrambling at the last second to try and find a new one. That's not always possible, absolutely, but whenever possible, I try to do that. All right. We've got some questions online, so let me pull those up. Who owns the intellectual property for any online videos? It depends on the video, honestly. If we're talking about ones that you made, that would be a university decision as to whether or not, because it comes as part of your course, right? So who owns the intellectual rights to all of your course content right now? Is it you or is it the university? And I can't answer these questions. These would be ones that you'd want to ask your leadership. So that would be something to cover. If it's a video outside of what you've recorded yourself or what someone at the school has recorded, then you need to check what you're allowed to use. And actually, guess what we're going to talk about a little later? When we talk about our open educational resources, we'll talk a little bit about those rights and that kind of thing, what you can use, what you can't use. There are a lot of things, so you just need to check. You need to check whether you're allowed to use it. Are you allowed to use it unmodified, or are you allowed to modify it? Can you use it non-commercial? Can you use it commercial? Or however, no matter how it is, like if you are allowed to use it, always reference it though. So no matter what, just like an article, reference it.